All right. All right. All right. Hey, thank you very much for tuning in and welcome back to the Propaganda Wars again. I am your host, David Taylor. So I was doing the whole cruising the interwebs, cruising the internet, checking out, trying to figure out my next story when I came across the Jesse Watters interview with DOGE. And wow, I just started getting into it, and I'm like, you know what? I got to share it, right? We got to talk about it. I haven't seen all of it. I've seen a few minutes of it. But as soon as it hit, I was like, yeah, this proves a lot of points that I was trying to make in my earlier videos about how the leftists are becoming terrorists and their impact of what they're doing to Tesla and how it directly affects our government, okay? And that's why it's terrorism. And just within the first few minutes, they kind of almost help outline my entire argument pretty flawlessly, but we're going to go past that. I think this clip is 15 minutes or something like that. So, before we get to it, please like, share, and subscribe for more Propaganda Wars. Listen, Propaganda Wars is all about trying to figure out what the real narrative, I got marbles in my mouth, what the real narrative is, okay? Listen, everybody on the internet, okay? Everybody, including me, everybody on TV, okay? They have an agenda, okay? Everybody does. And what they do, what the mainstream media, what they do is they latch on to pieces, but they never give the full story and the full context. What they do is they take one piece and they spin it out of control until it fits their narrative. And sometimes they ignore things altogether. So what I try to do is I try to put in the little missing pieces of what the actual real context of the situation is to fight back against literally what is propaganda. Our entire mainstream media has been compromised, okay? The idea of fake news is very real in a very real way, okay? There was a program a long time ago by the CIA where they actually infiltrated our news organizations. That's why I'm so adamant about cutting off funding for state-run media, because 99% of the time it's government propaganda, and a lot of things stem directly from that fountain, okay? And what we need as human beings is the truth. We need the truth, whatever the truth is. We need to take that Band-Aid and we need to rip it off completely, okay? So I came across this. It is DOGE, it is Elon Musk, it is Jesse Watters discussing basically what they found. I think you get to meet some of them. So without further ado, on with our show.
Tonight, our exclusive look into DOGE. Elon Musk was nice enough to invite us into the Eisenhower building last night to sit in on his weekly 10 p.m. DOGE meeting. Yeah, they usually meet at 10 o'clock. I'm almost in bed by then. We met the whole crew, even big balls, and they showed us how DOGE really gets done. We sat back, listened, and we learned a lot, and we hope you do too. Here's part one of our exclusive interview. Elon, thank you so much for bringing us into the meeting here. I'm going to do something no anchor ever does. I'm not going to talk.
What?
For as long as possible.
You're talking right now.
I'm going to let you run your meeting, and then I'll interrupt when I'm bored. So take it away.
So, like a board meeting?
Like a board meeting. Exactly.
All right. Well, I guess we normally go around the table, say what do we get done this week?
Want to go this way?
Sure. No, we start with you.
Sure. So actually, a lot of great work at the Treasury this week. One of the crazy things with regards to the Treasury is that when a payment is made, and the computers at the Treasury actually pay about $5 trillion per year, like crazy amounts, there was formerly not a budget code on there. So if a payment was made, you didn't know actually what it was for. It could have been for anything.
Yeah.
There was a $4 billion COVID fund in the Department of Education, and there was no receipts required, so people could just draw down on it. And when people looked into it, this wasn't us, this was before us, they found that money was being used to rent out Caesar's Palace for parties, rent out stadiums, et cetera. And so the one change that DOGE made with the Department of Education is we had the simple requirement that if you draw down money, you must first upload a receipt. That was the only change that was made. You must upload your receipt. And upon doing so,
Yes.
nobody drew down any money anymore.
Yes, but we didn't say that we'd check the receipt. You could send a fake receipt. You could send a picture of your dog. Anything. Anything. But as soon as we asked for anything at all, suddenly the requests were like, oh, we don't need it anymore. Huh, that's interesting.
They were renting Caesar's Palace.
Yes, they were like basically partying on the taxpayer money.
Stadiums.
Yes.
Leasing stadiums.
Leasing stadiums.
Hold up. All right, look at it. So basically, yeah, this kind of goes into a clip I saw later. I don't know if it'll be in here, but so basically they were operating without receipts. Like you could take money and not tell them what you did with it. And they were renting out Caesar's Palace. You know, I've kind of come across some of those kind of parties before. Wow.
For what?
For parties, basically.
For parties.
Yes.
That's a big party.
It's a big party.
You'd think if you were stealing, you'd start small.
They do start small. But then what happens is over the years, so generally the fraud starts out small and they try to hide it. But then year after year, if nobody stops the fraud, it gets more and more brazen. And every year it gets bigger until they're literally renting out stadiums. What's
that, $1 million to rent out a stadium?
Fraud in flagrante delicto, okay? We're talking at scale.
This is driving me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
When you find these things, do you guys get mad? Or do you're like, yes, I got one? How does it make you feel?
It's so common.
It's so common.
It's so common. It's so common. I mean, in a weird way, I get why they're laughing. You know? It's like, it's so ridiculous. Like, the level of fraud and abuse is so ridiculous. And it's true. The more leeway you give to people who commit fraud, the more fraud they will commit. That's just human nature. It becomes condoned and it no longer becomes fraud. Now it becomes just a part of doing business.
I mean, you just
get numb to it.
Unfortunately, like the 100th time you've heard it, it's hard not to get a little numb.
Yeah.
You know, but and by the 200th time, you're like, well, okay, it's just another day at the office.
We checked, is the Small Business Administration giving loans to dead people over the age of 120? The answer was yes, and it was around $330 million in total. So
people with a birthday that could not possibly be real.
Yeah.
Meaning they're over 100. They're 115 years old or older. The oldest living American is 114. So it's safe to say if anybody is in the system as 115 years or older, that is fake.
So just by sharing a database and looking at Social Security numbers that showed that at the time of the loan, they had listed as over 115 years old, or actually under 11. We didn't even check for under 18.
Babies and dead
under 11 years old. That's pretty clear.
Babies
right?
and dead people were getting loans.
That was $660 million.
I'm in my 40-ishes and I can't get $1 million loan. What the hell?
Also, people with birth dates in the future.
What does that mean?
Well, in one, I mean, I think the birth date, I think in one case was like
Fetuses were getting
no,
loans.
not even. No, really, sort of you're talking about like your great grandchildren, like with the birth date, like I think it was like 2165. So more than a century from now was the birth date.
George Jetson was getting paid.
Yes, because your birthday is in the future, like the far future, not like next year.
Right.
And this is
Marty McFly was getting paid.
either fraudulent or we have your birthday wrong.
It's either a typo or someone stealing.
Which is it? Yes.
Right.
Yes. You should at least ask, which is it?
Do you guys feel you're getting justice and accountability?
One of the, I think, extreme examples of non-accountability in some cases has occurred at some of the small agencies. I think the Inter-American Foundation, IAF, is one of the agencies we visited where, they get $50 million a year, congressional money, to give grants. These are things like, alpaca farming in Peru, improving
That's a real example.
Yes, that's the real description. Improving the marketability of peas in Guatemala.
Really?
Fruit jam. Yes.
What? Yeah.
So you might expect, in the private sector, a nonprofit to give, 80 to 90% of their money to grantees. In the case of IAF, that was 58%. So the other half goes towards management, travel.
What we're to find exactly, I mean, to Ethan's example is that even if you agreed with supporting alpaca farmers in Peru, well, actually, most of the money never made it out of D.C. Mm-hmm. It's going into the pockets of people in the neighborhood.
What percentage?
And they didn't even get to Peru.
Right. So what percentage do you think doesn't even get to the destination it's supposed to?
I believe the GAO estimate, so this is not our estimate, I believe it was on the order of only 10 to 15 cents on the dollar actually gets to the end recipient, whether you agree with that cause or not.
This actually does remind me of a book I read. I don't know if you have a chance, honestly, one of my favorite books I ever had the pleasure of picking up and reading was Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And if you have never read that before, you truly need to read that book to understand what's going on right now. Basically, a bunch of NGOs and a bunch of secret organizations are draining the financial life out of us, basically. And that's what the CIA / some of these private NGOs do. It's actually really a fascinating read. And all of this is like, I don't want to say like CIA 101, but like they call it an economic hitman because he wasn't technically like a spy. What he would do is he would go into, the story is basically this Harvard graduate, he wanted to go into the 3-letter agency, thou shalt not be named, CIA. Anyways, and when he was about to be tapped, he got some advice. He says, you don't even want to be with us. We're small potatoes compared. So then he got hooked into this NGO, and basically it's a giant scam when you really read down to it, but he brings the tap dance of, we can loan you billions of dollars, we can guarantee you this much money and revenue from these different revenue sources like tourism, like farming, all sorts of things, right? And so you say, okay, we'll take the loan, and then like 70% of it is out the door. As soon as you sign that contract, all of that money gets dropped into these specific pockets of these people who do almost no work whatsoever, like Raytheon, allegedly, right? Everything's alleged. This is for entertainment purposes only. Oh yeah, and hey, and like, share, and subscribe for more wars, for more propaganda wars. Okay, anyways, and this is part of propaganda wars, understanding what's going on here. So, where was I? So they make this big dog and pony show, and they get these dictators, these presidents, these whatevers, to say, okay, I'll pay the money, I'll get the money loan, and then 70% of it goes out to these different NGOs, right? It gets swallowed up by combination of like the deep state, the military industrial complex, various sources that are all kind of like this mesh conglomerate that we would call like that we would kind of refer to as like this hybrid between the deep state and this like corporate thing. It's really weird. It's like kind of corporate, kind of, and it's definitely CIA. It's definitely three-letter agency, right? It's like this meld, because at some point the whole thing is so interwoven and interconnected. I mean, it's like mixing water and alcohol together and saying, hey, now separate the alcohol from that water. You really can't do it. Okay, so at the end of the day, by the time the money gets there, I mean, there's kind of a shell. Some of the shells built. Usually, by the time they've spent all the money, they say, "Oh, well, we need more money for more of this and more of that." It becomes this big dog and pony show, and by the end, the president or the whatever is so in debt to the three-letter agencies that now these agencies have power and next time the United States or any Western power wants to go to war, well, guess what? You owe us money. We would like you to vote this way. That's called soft power, and that's what we've been using for a very, very long time, and it's because of these three-letter agencies. But these three-letter agencies have turned on us, and of course they would. That's their very nature. Okay, just like it's the same way in Russia. Putin is an OG member of their CIA-like agency. I believe they called it the KGB, right? And now he's president for life. Why wouldn't it? As a matter of fact, so was I want to say Bush Senior was CIA. He was assistant director. Or he might have been director before he became president. See, so these CIA agencies, these three-letter black ops agencies, have started draining us of all of our money, and we're now following the trails because now we got to prove it. Anyways, let's continue.
So they're just stealing the money before it even gets anywhere.
There's layers of stealing. So there's the first layer of stealing, second layer of stealing, third layer of stealing.
Subcontractor.
You start peeling the onion. Yeah, exactly. Contractor, subcontractor. It's like peeling an onion. And then maybe, and sometimes it's zero. Just flat. You get to the bottom of the onion, there's nothing there.
So maybe no one got a sex change in Guatemala.
It's possible that no one got a sex change in Guatemala.
I overheard a contractor tell one of her colleagues to falsify billable hours by creating a PowerPoint to mask a delay in the onboarding process in front of me. And this is like hour zero at this agency. And so, I mean, this is just a common theme that you take a look at these contracts, you take a look at these grants, and it's veiled in noble rhetoric. It's at the top level. It
sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. And then you actually just follow what are the funds actually doing?
Or send us a picture.
Exactly. And
the send us a picture request is incredibly good. Like Pixar, it didn't happen. And then they're like, and it wouldn't be that hard to just, frankly, they could search for some fake pics on the internet or get AI to generate the pics, but they don't even bother doing that.
So you caught them cold billing fraud.
Oh, I caught them, her advising her colleague to do this because it takes a few days to onboard. So that is being investigated right now.
Yeah, I mean, generally, like these programs, these grants are going to be like along the lines of save the baby pandas. And it's like, well, of course, who wouldn't want to save the baby pandas? And in some cases, they've got a show panda, which they will trot out for special occasions. In a lot of cases, they don't even have a show panda.
No panda.
There's not even one panda.
Yeah. Actually, that's what you're going to find in this whole fraud situation, right? This is what I've observed. The people who are doing the worst hide behind the most vulnerable, the cutest, the children. Oh, the children, right? it kind of reminds me of these auditors, right? These First Amendment auditors, which I actually kind of like some of them. Some of them, they don't do such a good job, but, excuse me, some of them do an excellent job. Anyways, but if you're hiding behind the kids that hard, there might be something you're hiding, because that's what they do. They shield themselves with children. They shield themselves with pandas. Oh, the cute pandas, right? Meanwhile, there's an entire conspiracy theory about whether pandas are even real, but that's that's one of those far out conversations, man.
I asked for pictures, and we don't even get one panda. And he's like, well, that's a lot. What does $1 billion get you? Does it not even get you one panda?
You really want to see a baby panda?
Yeah, like the Ebola money. We're like, okay, well, we agree with, we shouldn't have Ebola, Where's the money going? Oh, it's going to Deloitte in DC. What is an accounting firm doing with Ebola money?
What has been the biggest resistance? Is there one agency, is there one department that when you guys walk in, they all start fighting you, start hiding things?
Wait, I thought you weren't going to talk.
I'm sorry.
An accounting firm with Ebola money. What is that? What does an accounting firm have anything? Maybe they pay the people with Ebola. We need some receipts.
But I guess you can answer that question. Sure. I mean, let's. Yes, we've certainly had some battles. Yeah. Who should talk about USIP?
Nate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Jesse, there's an agency, a small agency called the United States Institute of Peace. It's definitely the agency we had the most fight at. We actually went into the agency and found that they had loaded guns inside of their headquarters.
Okay, just going right into this, okay? The Institute of Peace. See? They hide behind peace. They have guns inside peace. I'm sure it gets a lot worse, but I'm just saying. Institute for children, usually bad for children. Institute for old people, usually killing old people. That's how they do it. They rely on your empathy to not look any further. And then but if you don't look further, you're the a-hole who let the rampant fraud, who let the abuse, the evil behavior, the death and the chaos continue. So you have to look further. You got to look at the situation exactly in the face, exactly in the eye, and say, what are you? What is the situation here? And how do we fix this so it doesn't continue happening? Okay? And these institutes don't do that. These institutes, they're like vampires, and they play on your emotional, your emotional lifeblood until there's nothing left. And honestly, that's where MAGA recruits the most recruits from, is the people who've been drained to death of their emotional life force.
Institute for Peace.
I mean, any given company, any given organizational name is going to be the opposite of the title.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was by far the least peaceful agency that we've worked with, ironically.
Of course.
Additionally, we found that they were spending money on things like private jets, and they even had a $130,000 contract with a former member of the Taliban. This is real. We don't encounter that at most agencies.
Yeah.
What was the money going to the Taliban for?
So it was a contractor. They received $130,000 for generic services. And to Elon's point, there was not actually a clear description of what the contractor services were for. But
was it for opium?
Unclear.
Or weapons?
Or nothing.
Or nothing.
or a bribe.
Or, nothing.
And you naturally have to ask the question, well, how did we get here? Like, when the country was founded, there were only 4 agencies. Today, there are over 400. So there's been a 100x increase in the number of agencies since the founding of the nation. And thanks to President Trump, he's now signed 2 executive orders to start to reduce the number of agencies in the government, and the Institute of Peace was one.
Okay. Let's put this in perspective, okay? Let's look at this for what they're actually talking about and what he's actually saying. Over 400 agencies, okay? Over 400 agencies. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of bureaucracy. That's a lot of money. See, the way communism works, okay? Communism is entrenched bureaucracy, essentially. That's what it ultimately becomes. It becomes this bureaucratic state where nothing can get done other than by at the whims of the bureaucratic state officials. A good example of this is the book 1984. I reference it quite a bit, but basically how there is a complete hierarchy and how there's a everybody is got everybody's looking over everybody's shoulder, and I'm not gonna ruin the book for you, but ultimately it is the state that creates this paranoia and this chaos, and he's dismantling that state. That is a very real thing. That is the deep state. That is an arm of the Illuminati. It's not the whole Illuminati, but it's the arm, because they need a thick bureaucratic state. Say that 5 times fast while drinking vodka. They need a big state. And so this is why I try to explain to people who are all still in the belief that this has to do with more takeover by the deep state or the Illuminati. The Illuminati needs people that are unaccountable for their actions, that you aren't able to call up. See, we need a legislature, we need a Congress, we need a government so small that we can literally call them up on the phone. They live like down the street from us. Right, that's what we really need. We need to know these people that so to the degree that we can hold them personally responsible. And right now we can't, because it becomes this bureaucratic BS trudge through the mud of who's responsible. I'm not responsible. They're responsible. So there are over 400 agencies, all leeching off the state, leeching out of our pockets, with essentially without having to show receipts, apparently. Anyways, let's continue.
And that's when we found all of the craziness, like the weapons in their armory. We found the payments to the Taliban.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
try to hide the evidence.
Right. So just a few hours after we got into their headquarters, we found that their chief accountant had actually deleted over 1 terabyte of accounting records from several years. So you'd have to ask the question, well, why would somebody do that? The DOGE team, fortunately, was able to recover that data with the help of a few great employees at the Institute of Peace. And I think the most troubling thing was they received $55 million a year from Congress, and any money that went unspent, instead of returning that to Congress, they would sweep it into a private bank account, which had no congressional oversight. And that's what they would use to fund things like events at their headquarters and the private jets. And so I think it's a great example, because most Americans don't know what's going on at a lot of these smaller agencies. And this is, I think, the most extreme case of some of the wasteful spend that we're finding.
So the agencies are hiding money from you. They're sending it to the Taliban. They have loaded weapons in the department buildings.
At the Institute of Peace.
At the Institute of Peace.
Yes.
That's right.
So this is a cover-up when you guys roll in.
This one, yes, a cover-up. Yes.
It's a cover-up.
They did delete a vast amount of financial information. That's really a definition of a cover-up.
Isn't that illegal to delete evidence?
Yes.
Shred documents?
It is. It's certainly illegal to delete accounting records that that Congress would certainly want to know where the congressionally appropriated funds are going from taxpayers.
When you catch them going Hillary style on their computers, do you refer this to the Department of Justice?
In this case, we did refer the evidence in the accounting example to the FBI and DOJ, and we were proud to do that. So yes, we did.
resistance has shown up in some very surprising places. So, for example, the famous fork in the road email, the deferred resignation program. So this was a program where you could resign from the government, collect pay and benefits for the next 8 months. Probably the most attractive separation program ever in human history. And the resistance actually came from the outside, with people saying this is a trick. And I heard somebody refer to it as an apple with a razor blade. And no, this was just a really juicy apple, caramel dipped apple. It was that good, but people were talked out of taking it. And now what started to happen is we did have about 80,000 people take it, and now those folks who did take it are on the beach, or they've moved on to a new job, and they're still getting paid. And so now we're starting to offer Fork 2 and Fork 3, where people can see that someone's eaten this apple and it was actually really tasty and good for them.
Is DOGE just getting started? This is a long-term enterprise.
It's a long-term enterprise because if we take our eye off the ball, the waste and fraud will come roaring back.
They can Doge when Democrats get back in power.
Yeah. Well, I think some of the things that, like, we're trying to have it be such that the funding is removed, so the grants are gone. So there's a lot of work required to restart the waste and fraud, and that will at least slow it down.
Click here.
What? I apologize. Some of my claims from the beginning did not get fulfilled. Bum bum bum. I apologize about that. You know what I was watching was different, but you know what? This was just so fascinating. I couldn't take my eyes off of it. I wanted to. I had a certain point in my mind at the beginning, but I didn't quite fulfill it. But I think it's definitely in this whole arc of the interview. So what I'm gonna try to do is I'm gonna try to get back to you on it. But hey, I'm a man who is wise enough to tell you I kind of overstated my claims. But nonetheless, the points I made, oh my God, the very idea, the very level of this fraud, the sheer depth. So you know what? Stay tuned. I'm going to find the second part of this. All right. So, tell me what you thought. Tell me if you've ever heard. Tell me if you've read that book that I was talking about. The Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Okay. And type 1 down there if you did, and tell me what you think. All right. Tell me if I'm not spot on with my analysis. All right. Tell me I'm not spot on with my analysis. Okay. So like, share, subscribe for more propaganda wars. This is what's really going on, baby. The fight continues. Peace.